You looked at your phone, you saw the name, and you felt nothing. Not sadness, not guilt, not the familiar pull to pick up and fix whatever was broken on the other end. Just quiet. If you've ever deleted a contact and breathed easier the moment you did, this video is about understanding exactly what's happening inside you and why it might be your superpower, not your flaw. You weren't always like this. There was a version of you that answered at 2 a.m., that absorbed everyone's chaos and called it loyalty, that showed up for people who had a different definition of showing up. You were the anchor, the peacekeeper, the one people called when everything fell apart, because you always had something left to give. But over time, you noticed something. After every interaction, you felt drained, anxious, even physically sick, so you started cutting people off. Here's what was actually happening in your brain. According to Dr. Porges's Polyvagal Theory, when we're constantly exposed to emotional stress from others, our nervous system goes into what's called dorsal vagal shutdown. Essentially, your brain decides that disconnection is safer than connection. It's not antisocial behavior, it's survival. But the deeper question is, where did your nervous system learn that people were dangerous in the first place? For many of you, the answer goes back further than you'd like. Maybe you grew up reading The Room before you could read books, watching a parent's face the moment they walked through the door, learning that someone's mood could shift the atmosphere of an entire house in seconds. So you adapted. You became fluent in other people's emotional weather. And now, decades later, that same blueprint is still running, quietly deciding who gets close and who gets managed out. The dark side of it is that when you cut someone off, they rarely go quietly. They say you've changed. They call you selfish. They remind you of everything they've done for you. They tell the story of what you did and leave out the story of what they did to get there. And the worst part? If you're empathetic, that accusation lands. You start questioning yourself. Am I the problem? Am I cold? Is there something wrong with me? Here's what's actually happening. The people who make the most noise when you pull away are often the ones who benefited most from your inability to say no. The guilt you feel isn't evidence that you were wrong. It's evidence that you care. There's a difference. People who cut others off quickly often share a common trait. They're pattern recognizers. Research shows that individuals who've experienced emotional drain or trauma develop heightened threat detection abilities. You don't just observe people, you process them. You notice when someone's warmth turns transactional, so you step back, and for a good reason. The Harvard study of adult development found that relationship quality matters more than quantity for both mental and physical health. Your selective approach isn't isolation, it's optimization. Here's what most people don't realize. Toxic relationships don't just hurt emotionally, they hurt physically. The CDC has documented that chronic social stress increases inflammation, weakens immune function, and can even trigger cardiovascular problems. Many people who cut others off report immediate improvements in sleep, energy, and overall health. Your body is literally thanking you for those boundaries. But here's where it gets tricky. Society tells us we need large social networks to be happy. You might feel guilty, especially when cutting off family members or long-term friends. This guilt is normal, but it's often misplaced. Family systems theory explains this as emotional cutoff. Sometimes, disconnecting from toxic family dynamics is necessary for psychological survival. The loneliness epidemic isn't about having fewer people in your life, it's about having the wrong people. There's a crucial difference between isolating out of fear and being selective out of self-respect. Isolation builds walls to keep everyone out. Selectivity builds gates to let the right people in. If you're cutting people off because you've learned to value peace over chaos, quality over quantity, and your mental health over others' expectations, that's not a disorder, that's wisdom. So if you're someone who cuts people off, remember this: you're not broken. You're not cold. You're someone who's learned that your energy is precious. worthless. Your peace is valuable, and your boundaries are necessary. In a world that often demands we give until we're empty, choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And if you want to better understand the people that surround you, check this video right here. It will help you figure out who are the toxic people in your life.